Dude, Shred Monster.
Trying, mate, trying.
Hell yeah. We are at Defender of the Riff. I'm hanging with Joshua Baines. My name is Daniel DK. Yes. Welcome, dude.
No, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you for having us here at the lovely Studio 606, the legendary Studio 606.
Yeah, it's cool to be here, man. To be honest, it's like pretty legendary place. I don't really never thought I'd end up in somewhere like this to record a Malevolence album. Do you know what I mean? So it's cool to be here, and it's nice to see the history, and nice to have you guys here as well to join us.
Yeah, it's awesome. I appreciate the little tour. A pretty iconic live room right next to us.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I felt a bit like of an imposter, to be honest. I've been here for like 5 days, so but I'm like giving the tours and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know, man. You seem to know your way around pretty well.
Yeah. It's not that big. I just like I've done a few laps myself. Do you know what I mean? Just trying to get used to the layout.
I appreciate you doing the show. This is kind of all about getting to know you as a player and your relationship with the instrument. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. So why don't you start telling me your story? Let's start with some of those first musical sounds that you heard that kind of piqued your ears in the house as a little kid.
Ever since I can remember, like my parents were playing like rock music in the house, stuff like that. My dad's like into Motorhead and, you know, Van Halen and Sabbath and Ozzy and
Sabbath and Drop B.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, heavy as fuck. Yeah, it was pretty much always on in the house of some capacity, and he's like really into like guitarists as well. He doesn't play much himself, but like he was always like a fan of, you know, Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and, you know, Eddie Van Halen and things like that. So it was sort of an obvious route for me to take, I guess. You know, my mum was sort of into like Whitesnake and like more like Nickelback, you know, stuff like that, you know, like the softer sort of like radio rock sort of side of it. So I got a bit of a melting pot in that sort of way. It made it pretty easy for me to be exposed to it. And then watching Kerrang! And there's a TV program called Scuzz as well, like when we were kids, that was just playing music videos of the time. Things like Linkin Park were on at the time, Korn, you know, Nickelback again, or like, you know, Limp Bizkit, like the new metal stuff as well as like Blink-182. So it just triggered something in my head, I guess, you know. I was like, this looks like cool. Yeah. I want to do that, you know. It's like, by the time I was like 7, my dad bought me a Squier Strat, and that was it from there, really. Just like started playing and just kept playing, and, you know, first things I learned were sort of, you know, Green Day, sort of like chords, whatever, because that was like what I was listening to at like such a young age as well, like when I had my first CDs or whatever, you know. So it just sort of escalated from there, really.
All right, so we're talking simple songs that you're learning off the bat, the pop punk chord stuff. We're at Studio 606, where with the, you know, legendary Neve desk that recorded Nevermind. Were any Nirvana riffs part of that repertoire when you were growing up?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, you know, the obvious one, Smells Like Teen Spirit and stuff. But like one that's always like been slightly more interesting. You know, like Heart-Shaped Box or whatever. I just like the, you know, there's like kind of like nice sort of ambience to it, I suppose.
Yeah, it does.
You know what I mean?
That's actually a very cool riff. I never really thought about Heart-Shaped Box as being like a cool-ass riff like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's just, something different. It's got like, it's kind of like a slowy, ploddy, like, I don't know, it's kind of cool. And, like,
dark.
The video, like, always stuck in my head as well as, like, you know, something when I was a kid, like, I'd see it on Kerrang! And yeah, I always thought Nirvana was fucking sick.
And where more an appropriate place to play that riff than sitting in this room, right?
A good amount of time looking at all the Nirvana stuff that's like dotted around in here, you know, like.
Pretty cool, man. Where it's a super legendary space we're in. Gotta pay tribute.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah, homage to the Lords.
It's always a huge asset for when you're growing up and you have parents that are listening to music that would be relevant to your interests. Like you're saying, like, you know, dad's into the greasy rock and roll and early heavy metal shit, and mom's rocking more the hair metal and the cock rock stuff. It's cool when you got parents that are listening to relevant music like that for a kid, as opposed to like, you know, traditional parents who want you to start listening to Chopin and Bach. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but as a kid, maybe it's not what you want to do. You want to rock a little harder.
Yeah, right? That's it. It was always like something cool about it, you know, like the aesthetic and like, you know, just having my dad had loads of records and stuff, just like looking through them and being like, what is going on here? Do you know what I mean? It's like all the artwork's fucking sick, you know, like the logos, the pictures of the people in the bands. And then, you know, there's so much to delve into. And then, you know, the difference between those older bands and like what I was seeing on TV on like Kerrang and stuff, like I said before, was like quite a lot different, but there was like a similarity. So it's like, this is like what's happening now. This is what my dad's era of it was, or, you know, my mum's era and stuff like that. But I just wanted to create more of my own thing, and like, how do I like get into this?
Did you gravitate, you know, more towards the shit that your dad was listening to, or were you like, that's cool, but I kind of like what I'm seeing on Kerrang, the more modern approach to rock?
At the start, I like preferred the more modern stuff, you know. I think it was just because it was like other people that I knew, like my friends at school and stuff, were like listening to the same thing, do you know what I mean? So it's like in front of you a bit more. But when I started playing guitar, it was more, I started with like the Blink-182 and the Green Day and stuff, because it was like fairly easy to play and you could get behind the power chords, do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And it was like,
pop punk's cool.
Yeah, of course. I still got a fucking big soft spot for cheesy pop punk and stuff like that, man. I love it still, you know. So, but yeah, and then as I like started developing as a guitarist, I guess, it became obvious that a lot of that was like pretty similar to play. Do you know what I mean? Like the chord progressions and like the power chords are the same. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's not a couple of extensions here and there, but you know, like, you know, that's is what it is, and it does the job. So going back to like what my dad was listening to, there were like solos on like, you know, it was like different tempos, different keys, you know, like things like different styles of guitar, or like, you know, you listen to Eddie Van Halen and sounds like he's playing a million notes at once, and then you're like, how does he do that? You know what I mean? And you like discover tapping and, you know, things like that. And so that definitely steered what I was listening to and like what I was into, sort of as a guitarist, because of the guitarists in those old bands.
Right.
You know, they were like better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just, you know, I think, you know, especially a guy like Van Halen, it could like change your whole perspective of what the instrument is capable of doing if you're listening to like rock songs, you know, based on power chords, and then you hear a guy like Van Halen and it's like, what the hell, to the tapping and all the leads
that's
and
it,
the
man.
melodies and all that. You said that your dad was into the Players, into Satriani and Vaughn and all that stuff, all the shredders, but he himself didn't play. Was buying the guitar for you at 7 years old, was that like kind of him like living vicariously through you? Do you know if he ever tried to play guitar, or was this like just his opportunity to make it happen for you?
Yeah, he's like, he always had a guitar, you know. It was like, I think it was one of those things that he like tried to get into when he was younger, like through the years, but obviously had me as a kid, do you know what I mean? He's like got to work, and he's, you know, he's like, he trains in Kung Fu and stuff like that, so he's like trained, that's a different story, but like he's busy a lot of the time with that, because he like teaches it, he's, you know, he's done it for like 40 years or whatever. So guitar was like a thing that he'd love to do, but just like never really had time. But I remember him saying to me, he was like, we've got you this guitar, like I'm gonna learn with you, do you know what I mean? So like it was like we did it together. Obviously he didn't have much time, so it was like we did some things together, and then I was like fell in love with it straight away, so it became pretty easy for me to like play quite quickly. And when you're that young, like I was like 7, you know, so it's like your mind's just like a sponge, and you just find out how you play a chord or whatever in your first scale, and you're just like, oh, that's how you do it.
Yeah, let's run with this.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, how do you make the sound? Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, so you bend the string, or you know, pinch harmonics, you know, a few years down the line and stuff like that. And yeah, I had a few lessons. You know, my first ever lesson was like going from C to G.
Cowboy chords.
Yeah. But then as soon as I like knew those two chords, A and D and E minor, and you know, like all the other open chords were like easy to play because I'd like got used to doing this. Do you know what I mean? So that was definitely, I think it like spurred me on quite a lot.
So the student becomes the teacher real fast with your dad. You kind of leave dad in the dust with the guitar thing. I'm assuming he sees that you're excelling and kind of puts his guitar aside again.
Yeah.
What's kind of the next step for you with guitar? Are you learning a lot of covers? Do you continue with lessons? Are you trying to write stuff right off the bat? What happens early on in that guitar journey?
Like as soon as I could play a few things, like there was a couple of lads at school or whatever that were like, we were into like skating and, you know what I mean, like Blink-182 and stuff like that. So we started like a band. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
very, very young. Like obviously it was just like a few chords and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So we were just trying to write stuff that we liked. Do you know what I mean? So we did that, and it was like we just played in the school. Do you know what I mean? At the like talent shows and stuff like that. But my dad was like always there, like supporting it. You know, he was like he'd always be like, yeah, like let's do it. Like he'd always take me to my mate's house to like have a jam and stuff like that. And then there was like a local jam night at a pub that was like near our house growing up. Anyone can get up and like have a jam, and there'd be like a couple of dudes who sort of like, if you needed someone to back you, they just like knew every song in the world. Do you know what I mean?
Awesome.
It seemed, yeah. So I'd go down there, and then like I didn't have any songs to play that like anyone else knew. So because they didn't care about Green Day or like, you know what I mean, anything like that. So I learned Ace of Spades and like did the solo and stuff like that when I was about 10 or 11. But yeah, so I went down, started playing that, and then like did the Darkness and stuff, you know, just like sort of rock songs that people could get behind, but I was like, I liked as well. And yeah, I did that every week for years and years, and it sort of got my confidence up of like playing live. And then, yeah, well, I was still having lessons at that point, sort of just like learning random bits of songs, but it was never particularly that interesting to me. I wanted to like know, you know, how they wrote the songs. How do you do it? You know, like what are the tools that I need to be able to write my own riffs, you know? So that was mainly my exploration. I did that up until I was like 14, and I stopped having lessons because it was just like, there was no point. And that's sort of when, around the time that I joined Malevolence.
What was the kind of the basis of the lessons? Was this like you were learning from tabs, or were you getting into theory at that young age?
No, it was mostly just tabs, you know, like I had multiple different teachers like across the board just to see, you know, I sort of like get bored of one because it wasn't what I wanted, and then, you know, and I'd be like, I found this other guy, you know what I mean? Like we'll go to him and he's like really good, he's meant to be sick, you know what I mean? But by this time I'd sort of got into like Pantera and like Lamb of God and stuff like that, you know, so it was like the old dudes who were teaching guitar in Sheffield, they weren't playing that, you know, and I was like, I want to know how to tune my guitar in drop C.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And they were like, I don't know what that is. It's basically no point in having
But you
lessons.
want to learn this AC/DC riff?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, no, I don't care about that anymore. Do you know what I mean? Or I can learn it by myself, you know.
Yeah.
So I was reading tabs, like I knew how to do that. Never really delved that much into theory, like at all, until I started teaching, because people were asking me about it, and I was like, I need to know what I'm teaching here. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it was like, so that's the only, I sort of knew, you know, like the modes, minor scale, up and down, just didn't know what they were called, or like the names of the scales themselves, or how you like use a mode, and you know, how they're all the same, but they all sound like the one that you start with, basically, you know.
It's pretty interesting, I find, a lot with guitar as an instrument. It's one of the few that you can become very proficient at with knowing zero theory.
Yeah.
It's one of the few instruments where the notes are referred to by numbers instead of notes.
Yeah.
You know, like people be like, yeah, the third string on the 6th fret and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So like, what note is that? I don't know what note that is.
Yeah, it's just like,
pretty odd. It's like, dude, like big time, very successful, proficient guitar players know not a lick of theory with guitar. And I find that it's one of the few instruments where that actually exists.
Yeah, I think tab and stuff like that has helped that a lot. You know, it just means that anyone can sort of pick it up, and like you know, you can learn to read tab is fairly easy, you know, straight away. Whereas like learning to read music and like sight read it is like another level. I mean, it's like really hard. Like I've delved into it a little bit, you know, just because it piqued my interest. I was like, what's it all about?
It's crazy in like the piano world. You could like literally drop a piece of sheet music in front of someone and they're like, all right, I got this.
Yeah,
like, how the fuck did you do that?
Yeah. It'd be quicker for me to just listen to it and like work it out.
100%.
Which is good for, I think guitarists have always got like good ears.
Tell me about, you know, we've got a good basis on getting the instrument, getting lessons. You kind of get better than any of your teachers. You said you joined up or jamming with the dudes in Malevolence around 14. Are there any other kind of bands that you formed, or like important jamming circles that you were in prior to that, or is that kind of your first big one?
Yeah, well, Con, who also plays in Malev, me and him like used to fucking chill, you know, like together or whatever. We had a group of friends like around our local area. we used to like ride BMX and stuff like that and skate or whatever. And it just so happened that he was like into metal too, you know. So we had a band called Decimate back in the day. I think I was probably like 11 or 12, and like we'd play shows like around Sheffield, you know, like there was like a metal night on a Tuesday at the Boardwalk, it was called. And that was sick, you know, like you could go down there, they'd basically just like let you play, you know, they'd book you every couple of weeks or whatever, and you sold tickets for like £4, and you'd get £1 for everyone that you sold, or like they'd tick off the, you know, whoever came through the door, they'd be like, who are you here to see? And if they said your name, they'd give you a little mark, and then tot it up, and you get a quid for like every person who came down, do you know what I mean? Which was, it was cool, like good opportunity for us to like get on a stage. But that was, yeah, Decimate was like the first proper band, I guess you would say, do you know what I mean? Like we were jamming and we were like writing songs, trying to record things, you know, and like we had no idea how like any of that works. Mm-hmm. Our parents would like bring the combo amps for us and shit like that, you know, so. But yeah, that was it really, and then that sort of like disbanded as like some of the other lads got a bit older, because it was like I was like 11 or whatever, and Con was probably 14 or 15. Do you know what I mean? It was like they were all quite like, there was some of the lads who were a little bit older, so it was like a massive group of like age ranges really. But we're all mates through like riding BMX. So yeah, so when they started going to like college and stuff like that, it was like
That was it.
yeah, they're like, well, we're not gonna do this as like a job, so I need to get a job sort of thing. But I was still super young. I was like 13 by this time or whatever. So just, we'd played shows with Malevolence already at the Boardwalk and stuff like that. So Charlie and Wilkie were already in Malevolence at that time as well. And we were like similar ages. We'd go to shows and like see them, bump into them. And then, yeah, they'd sort of just like hit me up. Sort of got to know each other. And then I went to jam with them. Joined them at like when I was like 14. And then I've been in it ever since.
I find two things about your early journey very, very interesting. One, the age, not only at which you get the first guitar, but pursue it so hard. A lot of kids can get a guitar at 7. There's a lot of distractions when you're 7, though.
Yeah.
That guitar can end up under the bed collecting dust, but it doesn't with you. I find that very interesting that you stuck with it. And secondly, that you weren't obsessed with learning covers. A lot of kids that age, and myself included, it was like, I want to learn every Metallica riff. I want to learn every Pantera riff, and that doesn't seem like it was the case for you.
Yeah, when I was 7, I know that's like a very early age to start. I don't know.
Early.
I can't really remember why that happened or whether I was like,
That's
I
like
want
some
a guitar.
Suzuki School of Music, like 3-year-olds playing violin type shit, man. That's wild.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy when I think back about it, because I think like, not that I know any 7-year-olds now, but like, you know, even when my little brother was like 10, I was like, I'd been playing guitar for like 3 years by the time I was his age then, do you know what I mean? So it's a bit of a anomaly, I guess, do you know what I mean? That I think my dad just saw that I was interested in it, and he was like, well, there's no time like now. We'll get you a guitar.
The guitar was probably like huge on you.
Yeah, there's a picture of me somewhere, like when I first got it, it's like Christmas, with the Christmas tree behind me, it's like huge fucking like Squire Strat, you know? I'd sort of learned quite quickly. I didn't really care about learning other people's riffs. Like I wanted to know, because my dad was like into the virtuoso players and stuff like that. It was like, how do you do that? So I can play the riff's fine. And generally, a lot of things were like just chord based behind solos. So I was sort of like, more when I found like Pantera and Lamb of God and stuff like that I was like, or Metallica, I was sort of like, oh, these riffs are like actually cool. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like you can play a sick riff and it's like can be kind of like quite complicated.
Yeah.
Whereas before, most things I'd like heard or was like exposed to was sort of like chord based, and then in the middle of the song it'd be like, you know what I mean? Someone just sets off and I'm like, that's sick.
I guess it's pretty cool that you had people to jam with. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that the more I reflect on what I said earlier, it's like, you know, perhaps the reason I was so obsessed with learning covers as a kid is because none of my other friends played guitar. You know, I didn't have any buddies who played drums. I didn't have anyone to like sit with and you know, woodshed it with.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like when you're on your own, it's a lot less exciting to be writing a song than if you're jamming with other people.
That was definitely a massive help. You know, just having other people who were like wanted to do it, and like obviously they like Con wanted to write our own songs as well, and we were like, you know, we'd jam and have ideas, and you know what I mean, it'd be cool. And you know, we had a mate Niall who played drums, and one of his other mates were just like, oh, I'll play bass. Do you know what I mean? And it's like sick. next thing you know, you've got four lads who are like, just want to mess about and like, you know, we play Enter Sandman. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that, and like, because everyone knows that riff. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, we're like, how do you make a riff like that? That's like got energy. And then like 1 week, someone would come back and it'd be like, you know what I mean? And stuff like that, and we'd be like, that is sick. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And Niall's like, just gets behind it on the drums, we're like, double kick pedal, straight in. Yeah, exactly, you can just hear it. So we're like, right, okay, sweet, like, we've done it. And that's how you like, what comes next? Do you know what I mean? It's like, the song's by no means like structured a lot of the time, but it was just fun. We'd just get in the little, Priestley had a summer house in his back garden, like a little shed thing. And it was tiny, like probably like half the size of this room that we're in now. But like, and Con just sort of somehow had like a strobe light, and we'd just go in there and just like turn off all the lights, close all the fucking windows and that, and just put the strobe light on and just play that riff over and over again, like for hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Just come out like, whoa.
Yeah. Dude. Yeah. Manifesting the live show to come,
yeah,
right?
Exactly, that's it, yeah.
That's awesome. Drop tuning. So is that something that you were messing with? I know you mentioned like Lamb of God being one of your early influences. Obviously, they're like, I think one of the OG drop D bands that I was listening to at that age as well. Were you guys always drop tuning when you started jamming with these guys? Is that always what interested you?
Yeah, pretty much, because by the time we've done that, we were like, it was like Lamb of God, Chimera, you know, Pantera, like obviously in like D standard sort of thing, but like,
Low
it was
and
lower.
drop
Yeah, it
tunings,
was lower. Do you know what I mean? Lower stuff, and we're like,
you remember any of those early riffs that you were listening to?
The classics, you know, the classics. Yeah, the classics.
Absolute classic.
I'm sure you've seen those memes. It's like before Drop D and like after Drop D. Do you know what I mean? And it just like opened the can of worms of like, you know, like spiky bracelets and like everyone's in full black. You know what I mean? All the time. We were like, Chimera's fucking sick. Do you know what I mean? Like, we just wanted to play stuff like that because it still had like a new metal-y vibe, but it was like technical as well. You know what I mean? It just sounded heavy and it felt different to like whatever a lot of the stuff that my dad had listened to, because that was mostly in standard tunings. You know what I mean? It was. And then, you know, when you find out that you can play a chord with just like a
one
bar,
finger,
you can start extending them and like lots of new metal. You get those chords, you know, like the new metal stuff. And when it developed into stuff like Kill Switch, you know, you get. You know, so like we're just like, oh, there's a melodic side, but there's a breakdown as well, you know. So it just kept evolving and evolving, and I've just always stayed in drop tuning since, because I like it allows me a little bit more freedom, I think, you know, like as a player, or I guess it's just the way I've learned now, but you know, I like the fact that even some of our songs now, like they're in C sharp, I guess you would say, and I like the sort of like pedal notes that you get on the high strings, because you can play that C sharp minor. You know, you've got that step below. You know, like things like that. It's like, it's based around here, but you've got to step back.
Yeah.
Which is like, creates a bit of tension. So things like that, like, came a lot into play, but I didn't have that as much with the standard tuning, you know, so.
Right, no, standard tuning is like kind of what you see is what you get, versus with the drop, you can keep that, the low register in the back pocket.
Yeah, and it's nothing new these days, do you know what I mean? But it's like, you know, everyone's messed about with it, and there's crazy tunings that people use these days, you know, but like, I'm pretty happy with that, you know?
So like drop D becomes drop C, becomes drop B kind of thing? Is that like the natural progression?
Pretty much, and I think like,
how do we make this heavier?
Yeah, well, that was it. Well, a lot of it was sort of to do with Con's voice as well. Like, obviously, as Malev started evolving, he started, like, singing more, and his voice just suited, like, B and C a little bit more than D. So we were like, all right, this sort of makes sense. And then I was getting into sort of, like, Misery Signals and, you know, like, the sort of techier, melodic, like, metalcore sort of thing. And it was like, I liked the polyrhythms and the breakdowns and, you know, like, and then the technical guitar bits, and they were all in drop C. It was like Partway Drive and, you know, stuff like that. So it was like, you know, just made sense. It's like, I want to play in that tuning.
Did you ever become kind of in the footsteps of your father, like a dude who was into shredders, like players? Did you ever like focus on those guys, the Vais, the Paul Gilberts, the Satrianis? Or were you always like a band dude?
No, I think like generally, I find it kind of hard to find newer players that I'm like really into. I feel like my go-tos have always been the same. It's like Randy Rhoads and Dime. Do you know what I mean? Are like the two
Goats.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, you know, that's probably really cliche because it's just like everyone says that.
But there's a reason.
Yeah, exactly. There is a reason. And it's like, I feel like everything that's come after that is cool, and it's like a development and it springs off into different avenues. But, you know, they're just like, no one's playing with that much like soul or like feeling. And it's like, that was like brand new then. Whereas now it's like kind of hard to be fresh and, you know, like create something new. And like, even if you do something sick, it's like there's like some iteration of it, or you can hear the influence from something else, which is not a bad thing at all either. But I think, yeah, for me, like Steve Vai was always a big one for my dad as well. And it was like, I think he's like the pinnacle of guitar playing, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? And that's like a lot of the reason why I like playing Ibanez.
Yeah.
You know, is like, I felt like that company always had like the top tier.
Well, Steve Vai, Paul Gilbert, between those two right there, you got like
exactly,
pretty much the two best guitar players in the world.
Yeah, I actually did, when I was a kid, like my dad signed me up to this like, it sounds like he's like forcing me to do it, but he wasn't, you know what I mean? I was like fully up for it, but like, yeah. But there was like, it was called like National Youth Rock Orchestra in England, and like, it was basically like about 30 young kids who were like, there was like 15 guitarists, like 3 drummers, like loads of bass players, like keyboard players, and a couple of singers and stuff like that. We like supported Paul Gilbert,
cool,
like in the Royal Albert Hall in London, as this big thing. And I was like, didn't really know who Paul Gilbert was, and I obviously stayed and watched him like afterwards. And I was like, whoa, this guy is hectic. Do you know what I mean? Because his like guitar's pretty simple as well. Like he's not got like the Floyds or, you know, like really, you know, it's just pretty much similar to what this is, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like, what he's doing sounds insane. He's like so fast. So, and then I met him and his hands are like this big. Do you know what I mean? Like, his fingers are like fucking trees, man. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, right, that's how he's got all these like diminished like string skipping arpeggios and that. But I was like, oh, that's actually sick, because it's like he's not using any like fancy tools really. It's just like that's how he plays. So I think like that was another big turning point for me. I was like, oh, so you can do it without like having loads of effects, because like things like Korn, I was like, oh, that's cool, like the riffs are sick, but like there's like effects going on and stuff like that. And obviously as a kid I like didn't have the money to buy loads of pedals, and I only just like had an amp, you know, so it was like, especially like when you first get a cab and a head, I was like, this is the best thing ever, but I've like got no money. Do you know what I mean? So like, yeah, so like, you know, I was like, I need to work out how I can make it sound the way I want it to sound without relying on, you know, chorus or like delay and reverb and stuff. So I feel like when I saw Paul Gilbert, I was like, he's shredding. And obviously he had like some reverb and like a bit of delay and stuff, but like nothing like mega fancy. And it just sounded so clean, and like, I was like, he's not really tapping, but it sounds like he is. And like sweeping, he's not even sweeping really. He's like, you know, it's like the string skipping stuff. I was like, what is that? You know what I mean? How do you do that? But I think generally just being in a band, do you know what I mean, and playing shows up and down England, or, you know, going to shows and like this sort of like deathcore, hardcore sort of scenes that we were playing in, the bands were like what was in front of me. So I think like, you know, you take the influence. And then also that was like, for me trying to write riffs and write songs, watching other bands as a band rather than just like, this guy shreds.
Right.
Made it better for me to like start writing my own stuff, you know.
I'm kind of interested in the role that the guitar played in your life. What did the instrument mean to you in that era?
Definitely when I was like younger, I would sit and play a lot of guitar, do you know what I mean? Like all day sometimes, you know what I mean? For weeks, do you know what I mean? But I was always like, I'm quite outdoorsy, you know, I like being outdoors, and like I skated and we rode BMX, like I said, and I was always into like climbing and stuff like that. as I got older, you'd like stop going out and, like doing other shit. Do you know what I mean? You have more of a social life.
Right.
But generally, like, guitar was always there. Like, we'd always be in the practice room at least once a week. Do you know what I mean? With the boys, and we'd be jamming, and that was like a social time for us as well. And then, you go into shows, so that was also the social thing. But it was like I was around music constantly, whereas I don't think, like, there was times when I'd like not pick it up as much, or if we were like jamming all the time with the band, then I wouldn't need to practice at home as such. Do you know what I mean? We'd go there and we'd practice all day on a Sunday sort of thing, So I'd get hours in, and then it's like you get tight with the rest of the boys. But the guitar's like always been, I guess, like my life, and became sort of my identity. And like, I guess when I was around like 14, 15, I was sort of decided that it was like what I wanted to do in whatever capacity that was. Like, my life was always going to revolve around metal, or like, rock music or heavy metal or whatever you want to call it, and playing guitar, like whether it was like would be a guitar teacher, or whether I was going to be like playing in a band, or whether I was going to be a session musician, or I'd just write music for other people. I just like wanted to do something like that, so I started trying to like push myself in those ways, and like how can I like round it off so much that like it will happen, and obviously the band started like touring a bit more, and we got started playing shows outside of Sheffield and doing it in like Manchester and then London, and and like people started noticing it a bit more. And then we got across to Europe, and I remember our first album came out when I was 18. We were touring by then, do you know what I mean? Like, we were doing weekenders in Germany, because obviously you can drive there from England.
Were you solely trying to make it happen with the band? Was it like, Malev's going to be the band, I'm going to tour the world with this is going to be my job? Or were you kind of like, if this works out, or if a studio session guy works out, were you kind of like spreading your eggs into multiple baskets, or were you pretty committed to making this the thing?
I was always committed to making the band the thing, because like we were all in it, you know what I mean? We were all like, yeah, let's do it. Like, it's going well. Like, a couple of lads like went to university and stuff, but they were always like, if we've got a gig, I'm there. Do you know what I mean? We've never missed anything, really. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's always been on it, and it's like, it's just always been fun, regardless of whether we made any money or we lost money. But as soon as you like start printing some T-shirts and things like that, and you can see, oh, like, we don't actually, if we drive here, we can pay for the petrol back, and like shit like that, So it's like the band was always the number one, I think, but I sort of used it as a vessel to meet other people, So like, now working with Josh Wilbur, it's like, I would never have met him or be in this studio now if it wasn't for all the effort that we've put in with the band, But yeah, the band was always the way that I saw it coming. I was like, I want to be in a band. I want to tour, you know what I mean? That's like, I want to play shows. I want to like see how far you can take it.
You guys were grinding hard in the early days, first records out, grinding a lot. And then I think it's almost poetic that a huge breakthrough moment for Malev is playing Bloodstock, when you guys weren't even scheduled to play Bloodstock.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
That was pretty mad, actually, because obviously it had been COVID and stuff like that, and we'd released an EP, The Other Side, during COVID when everyone was at home on our own label. So we were like, maybe it's translated, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, and then obviously other festivals started like coming in again, and we're like, sick, it's summer, like, let's go. But a lot of them were like UK lineups because people couldn't travel and stuff. And then, last minute people were dropping out because they got COVID and they couldn't come, or, they were ill. And so we just got the call from Bloodstock, and they were like, look, it's in like 2 weeks. I think it was Violence, like Phil Demmel's band.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be playing, and they were like, look, do you want to play? Like, you can have their fee or whatever, and like, you've got a good spot. It's like main stage, if it's there if you want it. And we were like, fuck, like, yeah. Like, why not? Like, obviously, like, we want to play shows. We've not played one for like 18 months, 2 years. And then, some reason it just like went down super well. Do you know what I mean? It was like
legendary, man.
Yeah, it was like, it was crazy. And then like after that, there was like a bit of a buzz about it. Like, oh, Malevolence is now, you know,
A
a
main
real
stage,
band.
yeah,
Do you know what I
main
mean? Like a
stage
real band.
Bloodstock.
Yeah, exactly. So they were like, yeah, for some reason, no one knew we were playing, but everyone came to see us, which was sick. You know, like can't thank everyone enough, and like Bloodstock for like actually putting us on and like just giving us a go, like as a band that's like before probably wouldn't have been regarded as like big enough to have that slot or whatever. But we managed to like smash it. Like we've been playing for years and years, do you know what I mean? So we're like, we knew that we could have a good show and like put on a good show for people. Like we move about a lot on stage. We're good at our songs, you know what I mean? We make a point of being tight and, you know, we practice a lot and like, it was good, you know? And it just turned out really well and they asked us back a couple of years afterwards. We headlined the second tent. That was also absolutely incredible. And
Hell
then
yeah.
like now we're playing again this year.
Catalyst to a bunch of good stuff. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
You owe Phil Demmel a beer or two for that one.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Yeah, exactly. Well, the first time we played with Lamb of God in Germany, we were like starstruck. Do you know what I mean? But Willie wasn't there,
Phil
so
filling
yeah,
in,
he
yeah.
filled in, so that was cool.
Phil
Cool to
Phil
meet
and
him.
Demmel.
Phil in.
Yeah.
yeah.
Your own record label that you guys started. I don't want to dwell on it, but I do kind of find it interesting that you and your mates kind of seem like Renaissance men of the genre. Like you're into like the composing, the recording process. You know, you're here overseeing another instrument be recorded. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you're into that element of it. You're into the teaching. You're into going to shows, being in a band, touring, and the business side of it.
Yeah.
Tell me about getting into the business side and what drew you to that element of the industry.
Before we had like a booking agent and like a management team and stuff like that, it was like always very in-house. Like we've always done everything. And like we'd been through different labels for the first and second records, but we were like, look, we've got a good audience because we played so much. Like over the years, we had an audience that wanted music. And like over time, everyone in the band sort of fell into their own sector. Do you know what I mean? So like for me, it was like writing the music and, you know, like doing the demos and like, you know, doing this side of it, like being in the studio and like overseeing stuff and like talking to people about mixes and, you know, and like trying to push the envelope of what the music was. Whereas like Charlie and Wilkie, more business orientated. Like Wilkie does a lot of the merch designs and like runs the store with Charlie. So they sort of created the label side of it and the sort of brand a bit more that we could link everything into, you know. So it just seemed like an obvious thing to do because if no one else is going to help you do it, you know, the band was doing all right. Like we had a bit of capital, you know, like in the bank. So it was like enough to, you know, get some vinyls printed and like get the artwork made and like pay for the recordings ourselves and stuff like that, you know. Well, we recorded it all ourselves and then got it mixed by someone else. And then, yeah, it just sort of like carried on from there. Like it's nice to keep the wheel turning, but not everyone has to focus on every little bit. You know, it's like, I know that if we need some merch designs, Wilkie's going to come through with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or it's like, you know, we need someone to like direct a video. Alex is going to be in touch with them and sorting it. Or like some gear breaks, Con's going to be fixing it. Or like he's in touch with someone to replace it and he knows all those people. He's got the contacts. And the same with me. It's like they'll sort of leave me to it and I'll be like, here are the songs. What do you think? Do you know what I mean? Like we'll go through it and like pick little bits and bobs out. So it's just like a well-oiled machine these days.
That DIY spirit, though, is really what keeps a band functioning. And I think even now that you do have the help in place, it's still good that everyone understands, you know, and can contribute and can make suggestions that make sense. I think that's actually almost more important than being in a band with people who are good players is people who have the work ethic and understand what needs to be done. That's the glue that keeps a band together.
I completely agree with that.
It would be foolish of me not to address the fact that we are literally sitting in Studio 606,
Yeah.
which means it's no secret that Malevolence is working on a record.
Very true.
I know long gone are the days of the 70s and 80s when bands were putting out records once or even twice in a year or 14 months.
Yeah.
And bands do it way less frequently now. But I think it's fair to say that Malevolence has kind of always been a sporadic release band with long gaps between. But you're in the studio right now, and last record was only 2 years ago. So what are we looking at? Like, are we trying to get on a more frequent release schedule here? Or what's with the change?
Yeah, 100% really. Well, you know, it goes back to being kids. Like, we've put the album out when we were like 17, 18, and we were just like, oh, this is sick. You know what I mean? Like, and then just went on tour for like 4 years, and we're just like partying and like, you know, like as you would, like you get let loose in different countries, you're just going wild. You know what I mean? Playing shows, like meeting all these cool bands, making friends, and then we were like, oh shit, like maybe we should actually write some more music. And then same thing happened, I guess, and then COVID, and we released his own stuff, and then Malicious Intent, you know. And we just wanted, now it's like more of a thing, and it's like, you know, we don't have to focus on other things at home. You know, this is the job that we have now. There's no reason not to, you know, constantly be working. You know, like I said, going back to the last points we were making about the well-oiled organization, you know, that's the job now. So it's like, there's no reason not to be writing and like doing your bit constantly, you know. And it's like in between tours, the only thing that's going to push it is like, you need to keep your name relevant, keep releasing music, you know. So hopefully we'll stay on this sort of track.
I know you're the main songwriter, composer. Is all of that pressure on you to do it from, you know, the ground up? Are you putting together demos for everything? I know you're a drummer as well. Are you putting together drum parts and everything?
Yeah. I program the drums, you know, like in our little studio. We've sort of got a place that's like similar to this, you know, like with the practice room is there, the merch warehouse is there, you know, we've got a little studio upstairs and stuff like that. So it's like a hub almost. But yeah, that's just like what I do in general, you know, like if I'm back at home, like I'll do bits and bobs of teaching, you know, or like, you know, making videos for YouTube and stuff like that nowadays. You know, I write music for things like games sometimes, you know. I've just been recently asked to like do little bits and bobs of things like that. So I'm always sat at the desk, you know, like with Logic open, and I just play guitar all day really anyway. And like if I've got an idea, I'll just go and lay it down. And then, so it's not really a pressure. I'm not trying to write songs straight away. It's just like if I've got some stuff. And generally if I like write one riff and I like put the drums in, I like sort it out, put the layers in, and then I'm just like sort of spurred on to do the next bit. And I'm like, what's going to come next? Oh, this bit's cool actually. Like maybe I'll just like keep going. Do you know what I mean? And before you know it, you've got a few different like ideas, you know, and there's like 3 or 4 80% songs, you know, and it's like, so we all sort of get together and put the vocals over the top once, you know, the demos are like fleshed out and everyone's happy with them.
I think all we're missing from you is a lead vocal on a record somewhere, because we've seen you play drums, we've seen you fill in on bass before, or Trivium, you know, we know.
Yeah, that's it.
You can kind of do everything. We're just waiting on that vocal line.
To be fair, it almost happened on this album, but like I wrote like a part, you know, and then obviously Con's vocals are like incredible, so he's better off doing it, you know, than I am. But yeah, I sang the demo and like it sounded all right.
That's awesome. You're one-stop shop, one-man band. Stoked to hear the new Malev. Is there any chance that, you know, we're sitting here in the studio that maybe we could get a little taste of something? Dude, that is sick.
Nice one, man. Yeah, looking forward to that one. It's on the album now, so
hell yeah.
Everyone else can listen to it in full production soon. Yeah.
Soon. So this is a guitar show. We should probably talk some guitar shit real quick. Obviously, today we're using what we've got.
Yeah.
But what would be your normal rig rundown?
So at the minute, because we fly in a lot, you know, we've just gone to the QCs, like the Neurals. Yeah. Usually we've just got a big case that's just full of those these days, you know, because it's like one thing that you wheel on. We always use like EVH and like Laney as well in the studio to like get the tones. And we've always sort of used the classic 6505s and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, other than that, it's like literally I have that, a MIDI switcher, a wah pedal, and then just my guitars really. Like this is my latest custom. Well, the first ever custom that I've ever had from Ibanez. So I based it on the Squier Stratocaster that I got when I was 7. You know what I mean? So like
fits your body more appropriately.
Yeah,
now.
This one fits my body. But yeah, I didn't want anything fancy with it really. It was a lot, because I'm left-handed. It's kind of harder to get production models sometimes. You know, like, it doesn't matter what company we're with, but I always wanted to stick with Ibanez because they're just like my favorite guitars. I've always played them pretty much since I had the Squire. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, as I said earlier, like always top tier guitar players. So
this one looks awesome though, with the gold hardware and the one knob. It's like super streamlined.
I just wanted it really for like touring. You know, like I want it because obviously if they make me a custom, I need to play it. You know, and like, you know, get the photos and like plug it. So there's just less stuff to go wrong, and like I hardly ever use like the trem to like do dive bombs and stuff like that. One's obviously got more stuff on it, but that's just like straight production, straight off the shelf. Do you know what I mean? So
sweet.
But I based this one off that, so it's the same woods, same spec really. I've got like different pickups, and obviously no tone knob. Generally never touch it, you know. But yeah, I just got rid of the Floyd, and it's a little bit lighter now. And like I said, they said like, what do you want? I'll pay homage to my former self as like a, you know, it's like I got my first guitar in '07, and then, you know, recently I got my first Ibanez custom, like one of one. Do you know what I mean? So that's cool. Like, it's like a nice journey.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's like a landmark for me personally. Do you know what I mean? And just being like, this is sick. You know?
For any guitarist, man, that's made for you. One of one. That's super
exactly,
cool. It's a total rite of passage. That's awesome.
Yeah, we got to meet all the guys yesterday. We went to the Ibanez like Hoshino place in California, so that was pretty sick. Like I met the guy who made this guitar. Hoshino. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember it because like we never get any left-handed ones through." And I was like,
awesome.
"Oh yeah, sick, man, nice one." I was like, "Plays like a dream," you know. It was like perfect for what I need. Yeah, so it was cool. You know, it was like a bit of a moment for me. Do you know what I mean? Like being there and like meeting the people who've made a guitar personally for me from the company that I've always wanted to play, and it's nice to be like recognized as a player.
What's like the first riff that you play when you pick up a new instrument to like give it a proper test run?
Yeah, quite often I'll play Self Supremacy, which is one of our songs. Do you know what I mean? Fluffed it a bit then, but yeah, you know I mean? yeah.
That's good. It's well rounded. It kind of, I see why that would be the tester riff. You got the high, the low, single note shit, some chords in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So
a little pinch in there too, just for good measure.
That would probably be like one of the go-tos, or even just. You know, just like messing about, really. Like, just as long as there's like a, you know, the chords sound. Just like things like, you know, so it's like there's a, like you said, a bit of a well-rounded sort of sound, and you can like, you know, mess about with the different pickups. You know, just to like make sure that all's working correctly, do you know what I mean?
That's how you proper test run a guitar.
Yeah,
got it.
Of course.
Test all the bells and whistles. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining me and, you know, walking me through the studio, giving me so much insight into yourself as a player.
No problem.
Stoked to see where your career takes you. Stoked to hear new Malev. And generally just wish you all the best, man. It's been a pleasure hanging today.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. Yeah, appreciate it a lot. Like, I've had a lot of fun. It's been cool to get into it this morning and like play some riffs, talk about some guitars and stuff.
Hell yeah.
Sick.
So before I let you get back to recording a new record, you want to take everyone out with a little bit of a jam?
Why not, mate? Yeah,
you cool if I rock some clean tone? Is that metal enough?
Yeah, of course.